Midwest Whitetail is brought to you by Hoyt Archery, Fuse Accessories, Realtree, Muddy Outdoors, Cabela's, Rocket Broadheads, Scott Archery, Frigid Forage, Trophy Rock, Easton Arrows, RTP Outdoors, Non-Typical Wildlife Solutions, Ozonics, Wilderness Athlete, Grizzly Coolers, Redneck Hunting Blinds, and Nikon.
We're back in here at the Public Land River Unit. It was -3 when we left town this morning, and Greg was hunting this bedding area last night and saw lots of deer activity. Seems to be the tactic that works best for us on public is hunting the bedding. So we've got a plan in place to bring Zach out. What he's gonna do is head up towards the north end of this bedding area and ease his way towards the stand. The plan is for him to wind bump those deer right down here in front of us. Hopefully those deer, as they're escaping that bedding area, walk right down in front of this stand. They're gonna come right through the opening. Okay, come on. Bet. Got her. There she goes. She's down. She's down right there. We got her, man. We just musket punched a doe. Got her. Look at that. Big old doe. Well, good deal, man.
Yeah, man.
That was fun.
Sweet. Thanks for walking around.
No problem.
Being a woods guy for a day.
Been dying to do it.
It's February 22nd today. Zach and John and I are out on public land on the river unit. We're doing some scouting for beds, looking for sheds, and right now we're up on top of a hill overlooking a spot where Aaron and I had a really cool hunt at the end of the season last year. He shot a doe with his grandpa's old musket. It was a really special hunt to him and a really fun hunt for everybody involved. And Zach actually wind bumped the deer to us.
This is something that Aaron actually talked to Joe Elzinger about this on a podcast, and that's something that him and his brothers have had success doing, shooting mature bucks even, is this wind bumping technique. So we wanted to try it ourselves. Greg and I had talked the night before that Aaron ended up shooting this doe, and we decided it was a really good place to try this forced movement.
Because there's a lot of bedding to the north of where we were positioned.
Right.
And it was a northwest wind, so it set up perfect for that.
And once I got back to right where we're standing is where I snuck into the cedars and just started letting my scent drift down through these bedding areas. I wasn't going fast. I wasn't trying to make a bunch of noise. I was actually sneaking through these cedar patches, trying to just let the deer smell me, but not be overly alarmed, and them to escape that bedding area in a relatively relaxed manner, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, traditional forced movement hunts in Iowa are like what you think about what happens during shotgun season when guys are out driving, deer are running, it's kind of chaos, but this was really controlled. And they read the script perfectly. They came through what we figured would be their escape route. Aaron had an easy shot with the old musket, and it was a fun hunt. So I think we're gonna move on now. We'll explain the wind bump a little more to you. Zach will tell you about what he did, and then show you the stand site where Aaron shot the deer.
Well, right now I'm coming the same path that I would have went that day when I was coming on the north side of this bedding area. Right here is the furthest north part of this little ridge that we expected the deer to bed on. And right here is actually one of the beds that I came across that day. And when I found this bed, I could also see some running tracks out of it. There was snow on the ground that day, and I could tell where a deer had recently just ran out of this bed. We're probably still 300 yards from where Aaron and Greg were sitting that day, But when I came into this spot, I knew that these little secondary ridges were southern exposed ridges, and that's where all these does were bedded. You could tell they were does bedding in here for the most part because they were kind of bedded in circles. There was multiple beds in one area, and all the deer that were bedded in here definitely got wind of me or heard me and went exactly where we planned them to go, right off this ridge, headed right towards their stand. And they felt comfortable with their escape route, which eventually just led them right into Greg and Aaron. Well, that day, when I was walking through this specific spot, I was just really slowly creeping along here. And I could be pretty quiet on these deer trails, but I would see a spot like this where it looked like deer could be bedded in these cedars. And I knew based off the map that there were these secondary points here facing to the south. So I would creep through really slow, get to a spot where I felt like the deer would be bedded, and I would just stand here and let my scent drift down off those points. Again, we're not trying to blow these deer out of here running, we're just trying to nudge them basically. Ideally, they smell me before they see me or hear me, in turn, hopefully letting them, you know, just kind of sneak out of that bed, not necessarily blow out of there. I think the deer that the guy shot at came from right in this area, but again, just barely creeping through here, getting to a point, and then letting my scent drift over those deer beds.
Well, just found the first shed of the day, right along the edge of the pond over there. It's actually in the pond. Well, here's our first find of the day. Nice 8-pointer that found half submerged in the pond here. When I saw it from a distance, I actually thought maybe it was a shed stuck in the mud, but unfortunately, it is obviously a dead buck, but a nice one at that. Probably been here a couple years, and haven't been running cameras here that long, so don't know what deer this is, but a pretty cool find nonetheless. Well, this is a spot where Aaron shot that doe.
Came out right there on this trail. Shot it right here, about what, 20 yards.
Yeah, it was a chip shot. So the wind bump worked perfect.
Yep.
And you know, we talked about how the deer were, this was kind of an escape route. They're funneled down right here between the creek to the south, pond dam to the north, and the stand is pretty much right in between. But the deer were coming on the north side of the stand that day, which was absolutely perfect. Yeah, I mean, this stand sets up, you know, it's close to bedding, which has been the strategy all along on public land this year.
And there's actually bedding really, really close to this stand. I mean, just up above us on the hill, there's bedding right there, and those deer can't see you coming into this stand, so it ultimately worked out great.
Yeah, I mean, you're easily within 75 yards of where deer could be bedded. So the spot worked out like we thought it would for wind bumping.
Oh yeah.
That was awesome. First time we'd ever tried it, and you know, you executed it perfectly.
Yeah, I think one thing also that we might not have mentioned yet is the fact that you saw these deer in here the night prior, so we knew there was a good chance that there was going to be a fair number of deer bedded on this ridge, so we had high expectations of deer coming through here, and sure enough, it worked out.
Yeah, we caught natural movement early, and then by I think 8:30, 9 o'clock, we were pretty much frozen, and we hadn't seen anything in a while, so that was when it was time to start the bump.
Yeah, and the main points really with the wind bumping are not blowing the deer out, just letting your wind drift through a bedding area without them hearing or seeing you. And the other thing is using natural funnels. This is a spot that Greg picked for the rut, and deer get funneled through here, but if you're forcing movement, they're going to use those funnels just the same. So that's what our plan was, and it worked out perfect.
Yeah, what was really neat about this hunt is just the way it all came together, not only the strategy, but for Aaron. Like, it was a special hunt for him. He'd been trying all late season to shoot a deer with his grandpa's old musket,
and
finally,
not really seeing any deer either.
Yeah. So it was cool to have a plan come together like that, and to share that time together.
Yeah,
I mean, as a group, team effort. Like, that's been a theme all season long.
It's definitely more fun when you've got a team and you're hunting with a group of guys, and this is a perfect opportunity to do that. You originally saw the deer, Aaron shot it, and I got to push him to you guys, and when I heard that shot, I was super pumped, like always, you know.
Yeah, And Aaron was more excited than I've ever seen him.
Yeah.
Just as excited or more so when he shot that buck.
Yep.
So that's a fun thing. I think he said hunting is what you make of it.
Yep.
And we sure had a lot of fun. So it was definitely a year to remember.
Oh yeah.
Biggest bucks, Aaron,
Yep.
possibly yours.
Yep.
The musket doe. I mean,
Yep.
it was, yeah, season to remember.
Oh, for sure. It was a lot of fun. We learned a lot of stuff. I mean, we had definitely some new strategies going into this year.
Buck beds.
Buck beds, this wind bumping thing. But, you know, we'd like to keep taking you guys along, showing you some of our strategies, maybe digging into them a little bit deeper and just kind of showing you some of our adventures out here on public land throughout the rest of the off season.
Yep.
In this next part of the episode, we're going to be doing some shed hunting. And I've talked to a lot of people here over the past couple of weeks, and everybody is saying about the same thing that we've discovered. The antlers are really hard to find this year. It seems as if the deer are so spread out that instead of the antlers dropping in more concentrated locations like we're used to, places where they bed during the winter and the places where they feed during the winter, the antlers are all over the place. You know, the deer seem to be carrying antlers a little bit longer this year also, but eventually they've got to drop. And when they drop, they're just hard to find this year. So don't be afraid to go back into the timber, do a little bit of searching in places maybe that you haven't looked in the past, because we certainly haven't been finding antlers in the normal places. So let's jump right into a little bit of shed hunting.
It's February 28th today, and we're out on Bill's farm doing some shed hunting. We're in the heart of the farm in the area where he was hunting skinny last year. This is the block of timber right here where he figured that deer was bedding. And then not too far from here is where he ended up killing the deer. And this area had a lot of other really good bucks in it. But today we're primarily focusing on these secondary ridges and looking around in these bedding areas, hoping to find sheds from those bucks. And as you can see here, this just tore up in here on this ridge in particular. It's always been a really good ridge to find sheds on in the past, but so far we haven't found anything on this ridge yet. But we're gonna keep working our way through. I've got John up the ridge from me here and Eric down below, and we're working these ridges spaced out far enough that we don't feel like we're gonna miss anything, but covering as much ground as we can. So I'm gonna keep moving here, but we're gonna check in with John and Eric and bring you some tips on shed hunting and hopefully find some sheds from the bucks that did all this damage here.
We've talked a lot about the different areas that you should key on for finding sheds. And right now we're kind of walking through this trail that takes us through this bedding area. And like we said earlier, we're out here, we have 4 guys, so we have a little bit of a group. And we're organized pretty well. So when you're covering ground that efficiently, it's important not to get too far ahead of yourself and start looking out, let's say 30, 40 yards up ahead of you. Take your time, walk nice and slow. And like right now, for example, we're walking down this path and really I'm only looking about 5 to 15 yards. I got that little bit of radius around me that I'm really trying to key in on. And not so much on days like today, but when you have days that are pretty sunny and you have a lot of contrast, especially if you have the sun in your face, it's important to stop, check behind you, because when you're walking into the sun, you're squinting a lot of the times. And when you look back behind you, those sheds are gonna be easier to spot. So with that said, I mean, those are just some basic tips to, if you're solely keen on sheds, those are some things that you should probably keep in mind, because I think a lot of people do tend to go too fast, and it never hurts to slow it down a little bit and check behind you. So we're gonna keep on walking through this area. I know Greg found a pretty big buck bed up here that we're gonna go check out and hopefully find some sheds along the way.
A lot of times when you're walking through CRP field, there's a lot of intermingling trails, and one of the things I like to do is try and find your main beaten down trail. But when you're walking that, you'll see some that jet out to the sides, and something that's really handy to carry with you is a good pair of binoculars. That way you're gonna save yourself a lot of walking. As you can see right here, I've got a trail that runs both sides, and then the main trail going out to the food source is right in front of me here. So instead of following this trail all the way back and getting off my main course, carry a pair of binoculars with you. If it's beaten down a lot like this one, you can kind of just scan right along the trail and cover a lot more ground than walking and putting more miles on your boots. What is also nice about that is you don't get off your main course. In these big wide open fields, it's hard to just gauge where you've been or where you're going through. So pick your course. When you come to a good crossing trail, pull up your favorite pair of binoculars, check it out, and that can help you find some more sheds. We're wrapping up our walk here today on Bill's farm, and as you can see, we're holding some pretty nice sheds. We came up with
We got
one
that Boone has, I think.
one shed today, so I'd say we probably walked 6 miles at
We
least.
spent 5 hours walking.
5 hours walking.
A lot of miles
so.
on, for sure.
One thing that's different this year is there's not as much food on this farm as there has been in previous years. A lot of the food plots that Bill put in just got absolutely hammered, as you can see in some of the footage. Also, like we were saying, that this weather this year, with how warm it's been, there's still probably a pretty good chance that there's still some bucks holding their headgear. I mean,
Yeah, Scott Pruka and his group came and shed hunted a few weeks ago, and I don't think they came up with anything.
nope.
We found one today. Drew has been finding some.
Yeah,
Bill's son Drew has found a couple behind the house, but it's been slim pickings.
it's been
Really tough
yeah.
year on Bill's farm, but I mean, it's interesting that he shot 3 big mature bucks last fall, but yet we're struggling to find any
Yeah.
sheds here
Yeah.
right now. So
Yeah, he took off those big ones that are easy to find.
Yeah.
We're trying to find the young up and comers. So we still have quite a bit of his farm to walk. Really, there's still a lot that I think Scott walked it 2 or 3 weeks ago. So at that point in time, there's still a lot of deer holding. So the nicest thing about shed hunting this time of the year is not only to pick up antlers, but just to really learn, find new spots to hunt, and kind of figure out what the deer are doing in a general area. And we've been spending quite a bit of time on public doing that, and we're gonna hope to keep doing that, maybe pick up a couple sheds and hit Bill's farm pretty hard the next couple weeks.
That's it for this episode. We'll be back in another week where I hope we're gonna be out in the field, getting out there, maybe doing a little scouting, some more shed hunting. We know there's antlers out there to be found. There's several bucks that we saw last year that were really good up and comers. A couple of them were mature deer that would be target deer this coming season. We need to try to find those antlers if we can. So we're gonna keep searching. We're gonna look at some country, maybe pick out a few new tree stand locations and take you along for a walk. Well, I appreciate you joining us. We'll see you right back here again next week for the next episode of Midwest Whitetail. And remember to always dream big.